good day to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Millsy, back with Hometown Commander, and we are back for another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I brew my version 1.0 deck list of the Commander in front of us on my quest to out-brew your favorite Magic channel. This week we are finishing up the week with, as I explained in yesterday's video, some commanders that decks got mostly built but never got finished. A commander that I looked at a couple weeks back when we did that Capenna week was Kamiz, but I just never ended up finishing the deck due to some other things that I did. So I wanted to talk about it really quickly, cover some of these fun ones, and then over the next few weeks, as we do new sets, we'll come back and reach back to some of these ideas that I have. I don't want to just do new commanders. I want to kind of mix them in for you. If you're interested in just the deck list, or the deck list is going to be in the description down below. And I just want to remind everyone that I always keep my considering board cards that I picked out but didn't put in down there. So if you guys want to take this deck and make it your own, you're more than welcome to do that. But today we're talking about Kamiz Obscura Oculus, a 4-mana 2/4 Cephalid Rogue. This was the face commander of the Obscura Precon for I believe it would have been Commander 2022 or New Capenna's commander set. And this was always a commander I thought was kind of interesting because of its ability. I just never really loved the colors that it was in. But now coming back to it, I think we've got a lot of fun cards that add to this, and I'm sure there's a ton more. I've just picked the ones I thought were the coolest. She says, whenever you attack, target attacking creature can't be blocked this turn. It connives. Connive was a mechanic where you draw a card and then you discard a card. If you discard a non-land card, you put a +1/+1 counter on that creature. Then it says, then choose another attacking creature with lesser power. That creature gains double strike until end of turn. So on attack, and Kamiz doesn't even have to attack, Kamiz just has to be out, which I think makes some of these abilities even better when Kamiz isn't the one that has to attack to do it. Target becomes unblockable. Target gets double strike. I've tried my best to build the creature pool so that we're always taking advantage of the can't being blocked in a couple ways. One, just negative effects for our opponents. Or number two, ninjutsu seems like a really good way to take advantage of that not being able to be blocked. Get a 1/1, get it in, or get a creature with haste, get it in, bring it back to your hand, ninjutsu a couple creatures in, deal some damage, and get some fun abilities. So, I'm interested to see what you guys think of Kamiz. Let me know down in the comments, but let's rock into it. Trying to do something fairly different with my mana bases as of lately, trying to get a good mix, not just slamming in, fetches and shocks, but not quite as sure. I mean, the basic lands is something where we can change these numbers around depending on how you experience it. Just try to pick a good wealth of options as far as tri-lands go, so we have access to them. Try not the black gate because it can make a creature unblockable for attacking a creature with the most life, which could be pretty important if we're behind. And then Minas Tirith can draw some a card if we've attacked with more than 2 creatures, which seems like it'd be pretty darn good as well. Everything else should be pretty much standard what you'd expect from an Esper mana base. Getting into the artifacts and enchantments, I think the one thing that helps this deck a ton is seeing a couple reprints from Wilds of Eldraine. For this deck, since we're so close to be starting Wilds of Eldraine next week, I chose to just use the cards and go from there. So we got a reprint of Blind Obedience, Rhystic Study, and Tithe has finally come down, which is great. Tithe is a great card, and it does so much, and it'll do so much good for us because we're going to want to get these creatures down and get them moving and mobilized. Animate Dead can bring something back from our graveyard. The thing to remember with conniving is we're discarding cards, right? So we can discard creatures and potentially reanimate them. I didn't want to go too hard into the reanimator, even though I think it's something you could do. I mean, I have a lot of reanimating effects. I just mean we could have gone even harder on the reanimation effects. What you may find out when you go to test this deck is that actually is where you need to go. You need to be putting in more creatures for reanimation. So you'll notice down in the considering, I have things like Ancient Brass Dragon and things like that that could potentially help with that a teeny bit more. But I would want to test it and see where we are in the mid ground and then see how it looks. Pheresis seems like a great card to put on that creature that we say that can't be blocked. Infect's going to help us take out some people. At the end of the day, we are a combat deck, so we have to end the game by combat. We're going to need something. And then Reconnaissance, giving all of our creatures vigilance so we can attack and block. Getting up into the artifacts, you're going to notice we're running a lot of mana artifacts. Arcane Signet, Chromatic Lantern. We'll tap for all of our colors, Dimir Signet and Orzhov Signet playing in our main colors. Soul Ring, our 3 talismans, great upgrades from just doing just the signets. Midnight Clock is one of my favorite mana rocks that we have access to in these 3 colors. It gives you blue mana, but if you either run out your hand or if you have a really bad hand, you put your graveyard in your hand back into your library and draw a fresh 7. This is really nice because if you're going too deep, Midnight Clock can kind of reset. If you're conniving too much and you want to get those connive cards back, that can help as well. Dazzling Dagger is a really fun card. It comes down, gives one of our opponents a plant, 2 plants. Gives creature a little buff, but if we can hit somebody with it, it turns into a land that can tap for 3 mana of any color. That's the kind of thing we want, and we'll probably be able to make it happen with how much fun abilities we have. And then Wand of Orcus is a way for us to just turn our attacking into more advantage. It says whenever the equipped creature deals damage to a player, we create that many 2/2 zombie tokens. So the intention here is put this on that creature that can't be blocked to get some zombies to block, but also the next turn, now we have zombies that are going to start attacking. And now it's going to get harder and harder for our opponents to just defend the creatures that we're using our fun abilities on. As far as the spells, I try my best to have some fun with the spells. I mean, our removal and our protection are going to be kind of what you expect, but for the sorceries, I think this is where the deck really shines. I'm playing some fun random cards. So let's start with the instants: Anguished Unmaking, Deadly Rollick, Despark, Drown in the Loch, depending on whether we want to use it as a counter spell or a removal spell. Plowshares and Void Rend are our removal spells. I really like Void Rend. It's a fun spell, being able to destroy any target on-land permanent and can't be countered just for 3 mana. I think it's one of those cards that has a lot of upside, depending on what you choose to do with it. For protection, we have Clever Concealment, Flawless Maneuver, and Teferi's Protection. We are an attacking deck, which means we're going to probably swing out a little bit, and I think we want to have some protection on the back end and then Brainstorm for a little bit of draw. On the sorceries, this is where we're hoping to use some of our cards to have some fun. Asinine Antics just came out in Wilds of Eldraine, or is coming out in Wilds of Eldraine, depending on when you watch this. And this is a card I think could really help us out in potentially winning a game. It says we can cast it for 2 more, and if we do, it has flash. But it says for each creature your opponents control, create a cursed roll token attached to it. What that does is it's going to make it a 1/1. And that's going to help us basically, in a lot of our game plans, run over our opponent's creatures if they choose to block. Or we can do this reactionary, right? If they make a bunch of blocks and the blocks look bad for us, we could pay the mana into this, make them all 1/1s, and have them regret it. But I also like the idea of doing this on someone else's turn. If they're going to attack, let them declare their attacks, use this, and then that allows people to help block. Damn, one of my favorite board wipes in these colors. Supreme Verdict also would have been a great choice for board wipe, but I just like Damn. I think it's a fun card. It's a fun name, and 4 mana to just destroy everything is pretty cool, and they can't be regenerated, which is helpful as well. Jailbreak's a really fun card. This came in the pre-con, and this would be one of the cards I'd be excited to see how this does. It says return target permanent card in an opponent's graveyard to the battlefield under your control. Note that that's permanent. It's not say creature. So the cool part of this is you could get a lot of really random things, enchantments, artifacts, creatures, planeswalkers. There's a lot of fun things you can get with that if you want to. And then it says when that permanent enters the battlefield, return up to 1 target permanent with equal or less mana value from your graveyard to the battlefield. So this is cool because we could get an opponent's creature and get one of our creatures that we connived, get one of our opponent's enchantments, get something we connived. Again, I like this. It's only 2 mana. Yes, it's a little dependent, and it does target, but again, at the right times, I think this could work really well for us and be just as good as a Reanimate. Living Death is going to have everyone exile all the creatures out of their graveyards, sacrifice all the creatures they control, and put all cards exiled that way back onto the battlefield. If we're conniving a lot of creatures away, this is a board wipe. If we're conniving enough creatures away, this is basically going to be a board wipe with upside. Nuke the whole board, bring everything back. This is a forced sacrifice, so this is going to get around Indestructible. This is going to get around Shroud, Hexproof. I mean, this is just going to help, and that's pretty great because then we can not only wipe the board, right, but we can end wiping the board with an upside, which I feel like is what you always want to do if you can. Notorious Throng is a fun card, and I think it fits because at minimum our commander is a rogue, but we do have a couple other rogues in the deck, and it says create X 1/1 Black Fairy rogue creature tokens with flying, where X is the damage dealt to your opponents this turn. If that spell's prowl cost is paid, so we paid 6, take an extra turn after this one. So if we can make one of our rogues hit in for a good amount of damage, play this, get an extra turn, get some extra fairy rogue creatures in the air, and then get an extra turn to use Kamiz's ability to potentially hit in. I think this could be a fun card at the right time, depending on what we can attack with. Reanimate, just bringing something back, losing life equal to its mana value. Ring Sight seems like a fun card. This came out in Lord of the Rings. It's a tutor, but I think it's a fun tutor, and it's not as bad. I mean, yes, it is. The card has to share a color with a legendary creature you control, but the ring tempts you, so you're always going to have hopefully access to some sort of colors. I just think this is a 30-cent card, and in most decks it's going to function exactly what you want it to do. Get the creature you want, get the spell you want. No, you can't go get artifacts with it, but I think having access to all of your deck except your artifacts and lands still feels pretty darn good for 3 mana, and it's a 30-cent card, so why not? Stolen Identity is a fun card that kind of made me think of this right away. We're giving the ability to a creature to be able to be unblocked, which means Stolen Identity is always going to end up happening. So what it does is it says, create a token that's a copy of target artifact or creature, and then it says Cipher. We can exile the spell and encode it on a creature we control. When that creature deals combat damage to a player, its controller may make this again. So we put it on something that's non-legendary that has good ability, and then we're just going to keep getting copies of that creature over and over to help us out. Tasha's Hideous Laughter is just a fun spell. At the right time, it can hit our opponents pretty hard and potentially set our opponents back. Low to the ground decks are going to lose a ton of cards to Tasha's. Big stompy decks won't lose very much, but I think Tasha's can just be a fun card to kind of, at the right times, put some pressure on your opponents. Victimize is a really cool reanimate spell where we choose 2 target creature cards in our graveyard, sacrifice 1, and bring them back tapped. This is great because we have things that are going to be smaller, make tokens of these ninjutsu creatures maybe that come in and we need to want to get them in for something else. We can use this, bring this stuff back in tapped. And then Writ of Return seems kind of interesting. It says return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped, but it has that Cipher ability. So we put that again on a creature. Every time that creature deals damage to our opponent, we're using that ability over and over again. And so this card feels really good again with Kamiz. We can make a creature unblockable every turn. If we Writ of Return on the right creature, we can basically just get that every turn. So as you can see, the Cipher spells are kind of fun. There aren't a ton of good ones. We're playing the 2 good ones in this deck, in my opinion. But again, both of these are really interesting. And the cool part of both these cards is the Cipher ability doesn't affect the creature it's attached to. We just get another copy of the spell. So Stolen Identity is great because at the time when it goes off, we can choose what to copy and copy it. Same thing with Writ of Return. We can just pick something to come back. So I like these 2. Yes, they're high up on the mana scale, but once you realize that, hey, every time I hit with this creature, I'm getting a copy of it, you'll start to understand why 5 or 6 mana doesn't feel like that bad of an investment. All right, getting up into the creatures, and this is where, again, we're going kind of toolboxy with the deck, but I wanted to kind of get a bunch of good things that are going to be small houses on their own of value, and then things that are going to kind of work around them to give us good stuff. The first creature that we have on the list is Archpriest of Shadows, 5 mana from Mars the Machine, backup 1s. When it comes in, we put a +1/+1 counter on target creature, and that creature gains the following abilities until end of turn. Death Touch, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player or battle, return target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. So the cool part is the turn Archpriest comes in, we give it to another creature, hopefully with Kamiz, we can make that creature unblockable, and then the next turn, we can just make Archpriest unblockable, have it hit in, get something back from the graveyard. So again, as we're conniving creatures away, we're going to try to get them back. Boromir, Warden of the Tower from Lord of the Rings. It's a Vigilance 3/3. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, if no mana was spent to cast it, counter that spell. Here we got a little bit of control. And then we can sack it to give all of our creatures indestructible till end of turn, and the ring tempts us. This is just another way to protect our board for little to no mana, and it can become pretty helpful. Brina the Demagogue seems like a ton of fun in a deck like this. Whenever a player attacks one or more of our opponents, if that opponent has more life than any of your other opponents, that attacking player draws a card, and we put 2+1/+1 counters on a creature I control. That's a lot of text, but basically what Brina says, if anyone attacks one of our opponents, even including us, if that opponent has more life than another one of our opponents, the person who's attacking them draws a card, and we can put 2+1/+1 counters on any creature we control. This is good because then we can start building up those creatures we want to make unblockable and get into our opponents. A good card to build up would be Cephalid Constable. This creature is pretty cool. It says when it deals combat damage to a player, return that many target up to that many target permanents that player controls to their owner's hands. So we can hit somebody and start bouncing their permanents back to their hands. We may not even need a board wipe if we can set up a card like this, hit everyone, knock stuff back to their hand, start putting them behind as we're trying to kind of close out the game on the ground. We have Cephalid Face Taker, can't be blocked, so that's pretty great. We already have a good target for one of those Cypher spells if we want it. But it says at the beginning of combat on your turn, we can have it become a copy of any other target creature until end of turn, except it's a 1/4 and this creature can't be blocked. This is pretty great because we have a lot of other creatures that have fun abilities, and so basically we can just make them into that, but it's a 1/4 that can't be blocked. We can get these ninjutsu guys that ninjutsu in and give us an ability. We can hopefully get those over and over again with Cephalid Face Taker. So a fun card and pairs really well. Chasm Skulker says whenever we draw a card, we put a counter on it. Well, we're trying to connive with some of the cards in our deck, so that's great. We're going to get counters. And when it dies, we make a bunch of squid tokens with the Island Walk, where X is the number of counters that were on Chasm Skulker. Here's a good little creature that can connive for us. We can either connive onto to get more +1/+1 counters, or just as we connive with other creatures, it's just going to get bigger and bigger. And then when it finally dies, or we choose to sacrifice it to something like Victimize, it's just going to give us all the tokens as well. So really good choice there. Dragonlord Ojutai has hexproof as long as it's untapped, which is pretty cool. Makes it a good blocker. It says whenever it deals combat damage to a player, we look at the top 3 cards of your library, put one of them into your hand and the rest on the bottom. This is really cool because, again, now this makes Ojutai a great target to not, of course, to not be blocked this turn and get to look at the top 3 and get something into our hand. Drawn of the Last Blood Chief from Zendikar Rising says whenever it attacks, defending player chooses a non-legendary creature card in your graveyard, you return that card to the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it, and it becomes a vampire. I love this card because our opponents get to choose, but if we don't have many choices, then our opponents are going to have to be forced into a choice. But what I like is she doesn't have to do damage; she just has to attack, and she's already in the air, so she's already got one step of evasion from our opponents. With Kamiz, we can also just give her double strike if need be to help protect her. But again, get a creature back. As we're conniving these things away, we can be hopefully getting our creatures back. Fallen Shinobi, one of our first ninjutsu creatures, says whenever it deals combat damage to a player, that player exiles the top 2 cards of their library. Till end of turn, we can play those cards without paying their mana cost. Shinobi's kind of cool because if we have enough mana, we just attack before playing anything else, get to see what we see off our opponent's libraries, and then play our spells after. Shinobi's a great card because it hits hard at 5, but it also has that ability as well. Felisa, Fang of Silverquill, has Mentor. It says whenever a non-token creature we control dies, it had counters on it, we make an X amount of tapped 2/1 Inkling creature tokens, where X is the number of counters that hit on it. So this is going to help if one of our conniving creatures that we've been using dies, well, now we get some tokens to replace it. So kind of the same as Chasm Skulker. We're trying to get some way to get something from our creatures so they're not just dying. Gix says whenever a creature deals combat damage to one of your opponents, its controller may pay a life if they do draw a card. That's going to help us get some draw if we need it. And then for 7 mana, his big effect lets us exile the top X cards of an opponent's library, and we can play those cards without paying their mana cost. So if we have 7 mana and we don't want to pitch our whole hand and have some fun, we can do that with Gix. Glasspool Mimic is kind of a fun card. The backside is a land that comes in tapped, or the front side can come in as a copy of any other creature except it's a rogue. And it's any creature we control. So that's pretty cool because there's a bunch of non-legendary creatures that we control that are going to be fun to copy. So Glasspool Mimic is going to do a good job on that. Hidetsugu and Kairi, this seems like a fun card. This one's been being played a lot in Historic Brawl as of late for its second ability, but I just think this is a good body for this deck. 5 mana, 5/4 with flying. When it enters the battlefield, we draw 3 cards and put 2 from our hand on top of our library in 80 orders. We get basically a brainstorm effect, which is cool. And it says whenever it dies, we exile the top card of our library. Target opponent loses life equal to its mana value. If it's an instant or sorcerer, we can cast it without paying its mana cost. So, good and bad, right? We could potentially exile a card we really want, but I think the damage is worth it. And hey, it's a 5/4 body, it has flying, and it's kind of helping us out with getting some damage in. I think one of the best creatures in the deck, if we can do it the right way, is Nadir Kraken, a 3 mana 2/3 that says whenever we draw a card, we pay 1. If we do, we get a counter on it, and we make a 1/1 token. This, combined with our conniving abilities, is just going to get big, and it's going to make a lot of tentacles. And that's great, because then we have more creatures to attack with, and With Classical Mimic, we can make another copy of this. With our Cipher abilities, we could make another copy of this. I like Nadir Kraken, and again, our mana may even be best spent just dumping counters onto Nadir Kraken and getting tokens if we need to go a little bit wide to help us win the game. Nashi, Moonsage's Sign, another one of the ninjutsu picks in the deck and one of my favorites. It says whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you exile the top card of each player's library. Until end of turn, you can play one of those cards. If you cast a spell this way, pay a life equal to its mana value rather than paying its mana cost. This is really cool because we could completely tap out, attack with Nashi, and still be able to play those spells if we deem it worth it by just paying the life. And we do have some creatures in our deck that have ways to gain life, but what I think is interesting about Nashi is it allows you to kind of do that classic black magic thing in Magic where you pay some life to get something back for yourself, and I like that. And again, you declare that creature that can't be blocked, and now you have a perfect target to ninjutsu in. Oscar Rubbish Reclaimer from the original precon says this spell costs 1 less to cast for each different mana value among cards in your graveyard. Not going to be very hard if we start conniving. And it says whenever you discard a non-land card, you may cast it from your graveyard. So this is cool because if we go to connive and we really have to connive something we still want to play, we can still play it. The leader of the Obscura from the main set, Rafine, Scheming Seer, seems like a slam dunk for this deck. Not only is it a 1/4 with flying for 3 mana, but whenever we attack, we have target attacking creature connive X, where X is the number of attacking creatures. And so now we're putting more power down onto our creatures and we're having more fun. And again, this will feed our library, our graveyard even more for some of the reanimation. I think if you wanted to go fully into the reanimation, maybe you bring Rafine into the command zone since you have a more consistent way to connive, because Rafine doesn't need to attack to connive, and maybe that would be a better way because you'll connive more and you'll feed your graveyard more. I think Kamiz is a little bit more fun. Regal Bunnycorn, a 2-mana star where stars the number of non-land permanents you control, seems really cool. A good target for unblockability, and it's probably just going to hit super hard. Schema Thief from the Martin Machine Commander decks. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, we create a token that's a copy of any target artifact that player controls. This is pretty cool. Again, good target for that unblockability. Get in, copy someone's Soul Ring, copy someone's, whatever they have, and get to use it for our advantage. Shadow Mage Infiltrator. It has fear, so it can only be blocked except by artifact creatures or black creatures. Worst case scenario, we can put the unblockability on it from Kamiz. It says whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. Again, could be a way to early game, get in, draw a card, draw some things we need. Silent Blade Oni, another great ninjutsu creature. When it deals combat damage to a player, look at that player's hand. You may cast a spell from among those cards without paying its mana cost. What I like about Silent Blade Oni is it isn't just a ninjutsu threat. Then the next turn, if Kamiz is out, it's still a threat. Hit somebody, get something out of their hand, get the benefit. Skrelv, a card I think fits this deck really well, giving it some protection and giving something toxic 1, which probably won't matter very much. I just think giving it hexproof from that color until end of turn and can't be blocked by creatures of that color could help us get into certain opponents and attack with more of our creatures than just the one that we picked to be unblockable. So for 1 white mana and tapping this and Kamiz out, we could potentially make 2 creatures unblockable and get into different opponents to get our abilities. Thief of Sanity is a fun card when it deals damage to a player. We look at the top 3 cards of that player's library, exile one of them face down, and put the rest into their graveyard. For as long as that card remains exiled, you may look at it, cast it, and spend the mana, although it was any mana of any color, to cast that spell. I like Thief of Sanity, again, a good creature to put the unblockability on, or it has flying, so it's already a little bit tough to deal with. But again, get somebody else's cards and play them if you want to. But again, we're still hopefully hitting hard. Tivit, Seller of Secrets, says when it enters the battlefield or deals combat damage to a player, starting with you, each player votes for evidence or bribery. For each evidence vote, we investigate. For each bribery vote, we create a treasure. And it says while voting, we can vote an additional time, getting 2 treasures basically every time it connects or enters the battle. It connects. So again, Tivit, another great choice for unblockability. Get in, get 2 treasures. Our opponents are almost all going to vote for us to investigate, which is just making a clue token that we can pay 2 to draw a card. But still, we're basically going to always hopefully get 2 treasures when Tivit attacks. It also is flying, so maybe we don't have to give it unblockability to get in. Toulouse, Clever Conductor, says when it enters the battlefield, it connives. Another connive trigger, which is great. Whenever we discard 1 or more cards, exile them from your graveyard, and whenever it dies, put the cards exiled with it into their owner's hand. This can be kind of dangerous, right? Because then we can't get them out of our graveyard. But and it forces Toulouse to die for us to get the cards back. So maybe we need to be a little bit careful with Toulouse. But again, I think she can generate a ton of value by just giving things back to us when she dies. Rexiel, the Risen Deep, Island Walk and Swamp Walk. So hopefully it's going to hit a good amount of opponents. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may cast target instant or sorcery from that player's graveyard without paying its mana cost. If that spell would be put into the graveyard this turn, exile instead. A big boy, a 5/8. Again, we can give it unblockable with Kamiz and just ram it in, and hopefully we get to either cast something good, we get to cast something good from their graveyard. Again, we have to pick the right person to attack, knowing what's in their graveyard. But the great part, right, is that everyone's graveyard is public knowledge. You know exactly what's in there, and you can cast some of those things from the graveyard if we can connect. And then Zareth San, the trickster. For 4 mana, we can return an unblocked attacking rogue to its owner's hand to put it in tapped and attacking. Like I said, we do have a couple rogues, or we have our commander. And then it says, whenever Zareth San deals combat damage to a player, you can put target permanent card from that player's graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. And it does have flash as well. Zareth San, again, a little bit of a weirder ninjutsu clause, but again, if we, for example, needed to give our commander the unblockable, we could do that and still ninjutsu in, or use this ability for Zareth San to come in. And then getting things back from our opponent's graveyard is pretty cool as well. But like I said, I think the creatures are going to be a toolbox. You can put in those creatures you really like, maybe find some different creatures if you want to. But I like the look of a deck like this. It's fun. It's got some mid-range ability. It's going to kind of hit your opponents hard in some senses, but also kind of play with your opponents a little bit as well, which is kind of fun. We're in Esper, so you have access to a lot of fun cards. If you have some better, spells or instants, or you have some cards you really, really like, you can toss them in here. There's a bunch more creatures. I mean, I only picked out, I think, 40 total to consider for the deck, and I'm sure there was 30 more I could have thought of that would be great targets to either make unblockable or use in the deck to kind of take advantage of the situation. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. I'd love to have a conversation with you about Kamiz and what you think of the deck. But this is our first official deck from Wilds of Eldraine. Next week, we will be starting with the Fairy Precon, and we'll do the Fairy Precon next week and the Enchantments Precon the week after. We're going to do a bunch of new commanders from Wilds of Eldraine. I'm pretty excited. And we're going to be trying out some new video ideas. I'm hoping within the next couple weeks to get Brawl back on the channel and start doing that again. I've been working on what I want those to look like, so hopefully you guys are excited to see that. But thank you guys so much for watching. Enjoy your holiday weekend, and I will catch you guys next time.